It's not on my phone. Okay.
Camera, stop yelling.
Judicial branch. Article 3, judicial branch establishes, and we do well with the laws. Interpret the laws. You interpret the laws under the Supreme Court. That's their job. Section 1 establishes this Supreme Court. It's going to have 9 justices on it. It also establishes the other 2 lower courts. Okay? So, the order that this goes in is you have Supreme Court at the top, Court of Appeals, and district courts are the lowest. Okay, 3 different levels. District courts are at the bottom, Court of Appeals are next, and then Supreme Court. Supreme Court justices will serve life terms as long as they have quote-unquote good behavior. Okay, what are some things that you could probably get rid of a Supreme Court justice for? Where would we go to figure out what considers good behavior and what's not good behavior? Do we have anybody else that we had reasons to kick them out for? Is there any other part in the Constitution?
It would be the same reason you would like impeach
President, right? So the reasons that we listed out to impeach the president, those are the same things that probably would get a Supreme Court justice dismissed from his position or her position.
Has that ever happened?
Dismissing a Supreme Court justice? I don't think so. They resign, obviously, or they will die in office. Okay? They serve life terms. Why would you have a Supreme Court justice serve a life term?
Because they get appointed and they don't get elected.
They get appointed. They're not elected. That's true. We'll talk about that.
The more experience they have and the more they deal with the laws, then the better they would be able to interpret them to people.
Very good. Very good. So the longer that they're in there, the more law that they're eventually going to know about, right, and have knowledge of. They know what's happened before, so more experience. That experience is so valuable. Okay. Why would some people not like the concept of a Supreme Court justice serving a life term? This has been argued that they should not serve life terms, that they should have a set limit of years and then be removed.
So other people can do it.
Other people can do it? Okay. What about the concept of who appoints them? The president. So once a president appoints them, they're on there forever, right? And if it's a Democratic president, what are they probably going to put on the Supreme Court? Somebody who supports Democratic ideals or Republican ideals, whoever it is. Okay, that person's on there for life. So it doesn't happen very often. But what happens if 4 of them resign or pass away during one president's term? That's 4 people that they get to put on there, and they're on there forever. Nobody ever gets to check that. So a lot of people think that this doesn't go with checks and balances. That this is something that they should serve a set number of years, so that the president's power of appointing them is not so much power. Okay. Article 3 again, Section 2. Jurisdiction. Jurisdiction. The Supreme Court deals with laws passed by Congress or in the Constitution. That is it. The only thing that they look at is if it's something that goes against a law that Congress has passed, or if it goes against the Constitution itself. Okay? The other thing that they have original jurisdiction on, which means something that they're responsible for, is any case that deals with shipping. So rivers, canals, or lakes. Why would you want the Supreme Court to look over those cases? Something happens on the Mississippi River. Why would you not want that to be in the Minnesota Supreme Court or the Minnesota State Court? Because the Mississippi River goes through multiple states. So if it goes through multiple states, then you need to have somebody that's above the states. And the only court that's above the states is the Supreme Court. Okay? So they're the ones that make decisions on cases that deal with that. Very, very few cases does the Supreme Court have original jurisdiction on. Most of the cases that they're going to have or see come from the Court of Appeals. Okay? And just to get to the Court of Appeals is a long process. But one of the things the Supreme Court can do is they pick their cases. If the Court of Appeals makes a decision and you don't like it, you can't just go to the Supreme Court and say, hey, I want you to look at this. They pick their cases. Okay? And the only time really that they will pick a case is if it has something to do with a law or if it's something to do with Congress. Or the Constitution, I mean. Okay? What else?
When you're appointing someone, do they have to have like political experience?
Background?
Yeah.
No. To be a Supreme Court justice, you must be a lawyer. Other than that, no. Okay?
Wait, you must be a lawyer?
To be a Supreme Court justice? Yes.
Does he have a lawyer experience or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to pick a brand new lawyer out of. I mean, it's Supreme Court justice is typically a very older person. Yes. Okay? Impeachment trials are the only cases that do not require a jury. Who's the jury in impeachment trials? The Senate. Any questions about this stuff? Okay. Section 3.
Not yet.
Treason. Too late. You can go back and look at it later. Too slow. Treason. This is one of those that you're going to have to know. Where do I find the definition of treason? Article 3, Section 3. Definition of treason is it consists only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Now, I'm not going to ask you to memorize the definition of treason, but you need to know where it is. Okay? Again, if it's in quotation marks, what's that mean? It's straight from the Constitution, so you don't necessarily have to write it down. But the definition of treason is in Article 3, Section 3. What is treason?
When you harm against your country.
If you do harm against your country, so give me an example. Selling secrets to a different country, yes, that would be treason for sure.
Who can I really from like this the country?
Then that's not treason because you have to be a citizen of the country that you're going against for it to count as treason. You would just be a criminal then. What is typically, if somebody gets caught doing treason?
Life jail.
Yeah.
Death. Typically it's been death. Okay? The most famous example of treason is probably Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. You remember who those were from American history? Julius worked on the Manhattan Project. What was the Manhattan Project? The atomic bomb, World War II. Ethel probably didn't do anything, but they caught Julius selling atomic bomb secrets to the Soviet Union. That is treason. Giving them the technology and the know-how of how to build those things. Ethel was probably just caught in the crossfire, and they both were executed because of it.
Did they have some? How'd they come?
Electric chair, I believe.
Don't they do like the shot now?
Yes, lethal injection. Yes.
Well, like, what's in like the injection?
Different
Like
things,
stuff they go down with.
basically. Anesthesia.
Overdose.
Okay, for treason, you must have 2 witnesses. You cannot just have 1 witness and be found guilty of treason. You must have at least 2 witnesses. Why?
Because if there's just one person somewhere that doesn't like you, they can just be like, hey.
There must be a lot of evidence, is what basically the founders are saying. It can't just be somebody saying something bad about you. I mean, you have to have at least 2 people, that can agree with you that this person has committed treason. Okay? The other thing with treason is that Congress can punish you because of treason. Okay? Say that I committed treason against the country. Congress punishes me by giving me life in prison and taking away all my possessions. Well, wait a minute. They can't do that. Okay? You cannot punish children. Okay? So if, let's say I have 3 kids, okay, and they find me guilty of treason. They cannot take away my property and take away my estate and those kind of things because I still have children. The children would get that. You can't punish the kids of an adult if they commit treason. Okay? Reasons being why. Why would you not do that? Children are typically seen as innocent, right? Okay?
What do you mean by like Congress? Like they can have a trial for this?
They have a trial for this, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay? But children cannot be punished. You cannot take away the property of the adult just because they committed treason. Now what happens if these kids are like 34, 28, and 21? Then you can take all the property? No, same thing. They still get it. They still get the property. Unless they've been associated with actually committing the treason, they're innocent.
So what if a little kid like commit treason?
A little kid commits treason? How's that possible?
Big email Russia.
Maybe it's like a kale or something.
A kale.
Now, I don't want you to think that treason is just selling secrets to somebody. I mean, committing treason would be like going into and trying to start a war with the United States inside the country. Like there are people that argue, those people in Oregon that were doing that, basically had martial law, they took over that national park and stuff like that. That's pretty close to it. Okay?
What if they don't have kids?
Then that property is taken. And then resold. Just like you would any other thing. You know, if even if I don't commit treason, if I pass away and I don't have a wife or kids, then the government basically gets back my land. If I have no will. The bank or whatever I owed money to. Okay? Okay. That is it for Article 3. Now, I want you to look at Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. And you should notice something. Just looking at them. What do you notice?
Three verses ago.
Huh?
You're not allowed to deal with branches.
Okay, they're all three to deal with the branches, that's true.
It's
Huh?
law.
They set limits. Okay. How old do you have to be to Supreme Court Justice?
It's like 30 something.
Did we have it?
No.
No. There is no qualifications for Supreme Court Justice. So typically what they do is they use the presidents. You must be at least 35, live in the United States for 14 years, but you don't have to be a natural born citizen to be a Supreme Court Justice. Okay? So qualifications for a Supreme Court Justice are the same as the president, except you do not have to be a natural born citizen. That's a custom or a tradition. It's not actually in the Constitution, but that's what we have done forever. Okay? But now what else? You should just look at 1 comparably and then compare it to 2 and 3. What should you notice about 1?
It's a lot longer.
1 is really long. There's 10 sections in 1 compared to 4 in 2 and 3 in 3. Why is 1 so big? Why is the legislative branch so long?
There's 2 different sections that you have to try and plan out for, as well as like they have more limitations and things you have to set aside for laws that they can pass.
Okay, so the big thing is that section or Article 1, Congress passes laws. Laws, then you must set regulations. And you want that to be more of this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. Why would you want to be more vague on the president and especially vague on the Supreme Court? There's hardly anything in there about the Supreme Court. Why are they so vague and didn't put anything in there? They want that branch in that, section or article to evolve over time. Okay? So if you're very vague, you can always do what later? Add to it or change it. If you set it right at the very beginning and say this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, then you're setting more limitations on that. Now, for the branch that passes laws, you probably want some limitations. This is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. But for your president and for your Supreme Court, you want that to be a little bit more vague, and it's worked really, really well. Okay, for the most part. That you don't want to put all these regulations on the president or the Supreme Court because you want them to, the laws that you pass from Congress should eventually change and shape what Articles 2 and 3 do, what those 2 branches do. Does that happen? Yeah. The president's power has gone up and down. If you think about early presidents hardly didn't have any much power, and then you get all the way up to like FDR, and FDR has a ton of power. He's changed a lot of things about the presidency. Okay? Supreme Court, with Marbury versus Madison, right out the bat, they established judicial review. So if they'd have put that in there in the Constitution that they couldn't do things like that or could do only certain things, then that limits what they can do. And we want those 2 to be vague. So Article 1 is the longest because That's technically the branch that makes the most laws and does the most things directly involved with the people. We want Article 2 and Article 3, those two branches, to be a little bit more vague and figure it out as we go. Does that make sense? Okay. Article 4, relations among states. Section 1, another clause that you need to know the location of. Article 4, Section 1 is the full faith and credit clause. Full faith and credit clause. Who's got their driver's license? Take it out. If you got it on you. Probably only the boys.
Just leave it there.
Okay. Where does it say the United States of America on it?
Doesn't.
Nowhere.
It doesn't.
It says Missouri.
It says Missouri. So you can't drive in the state of Texas.
No, you
Can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say Texas on it. You don't have a Texas driver's license.
That's where you're like.
It's where you got it from.
But why should Texas follow it?
Because you gotta respect
gotta
the
respect
things that are
the-
changed.
Because of this right here, the full faith and credit clause, which says that every state must recognize other states' official documents. Okay? Texas must look at a Missouri driver's license and say, hey, you know what? Missouri says that this person can legally drive. So in the state of Texas, we have to acknowledge that. If Missouri says it's okay, then Texas has to say it's okay. Okay? Same thing with like marriage licenses. It was more of a big deal before the Supreme Court came out and said that every state now has to do it, but gay marriage was a big issue. You could get married in some states, and some states didn't recognize it. So a lot of people would move to those states and then come back, and you can do that. You could go get married in the state of Massachusetts and move back to Missouri, and now Missouri must recognize that marriage license.
What, like with states and driver's license, they have different ages.
Some do, yes. Iowa's
Right.
15, California's 18.
Do those still apply?
But if I'm in Missouri and 16 and I go to California, I can drive in California.
What if you like live there permanently?
If I move there permanently and I still have a Missouri driver's license,
You gotta renew it.
I can still drive
So
it.
you, well, so if you cars, well, they California plates, but you have Missouri driver's license.
I've already passed the test once. Once you pass it, you pass it.
Again.
It can be taken away.
Because
Wait,
he
what?
can
How
wait
did
like
he
a
ever
year.
finish?
No, he never took his permit because you have to be 17 in Texas. I think 16 or 17.
Does he have his license?
No,
You just got it like 2 months ago.
He did that forever,
Okay?
so don't be sassy.
Section 2. Every citizen receives the rights of the state that they are in. Equal treatment. So we can't pass a law as much as we would like to here that says people from Kansas are not allowed in the state of Missouri. Okay? Or if you used to live in the state of Texas, you have to pay this amount of sales tax compared to everybody else. We can't do that. Equal treatment for all people. Now, the other thing that this applies to is that says, let's say Missouri passes a law that says all helicopter medevacs are free. The state's going to pay for them. That would be a huge, huge thing. Okay? A helicopter ride, does anybody know how much it costs?
40,000.
It's a lot. Okay? But Missouri comes out with a law and says that, hey, any Missouri resident can have a free medevac. The state's going to pay for it. Okay? Person from Louisiana comes up and is in a car accident, has to be medevaced. Does that person get a free ride? Under this, yes, they would. Okay? Missouri passed that law that anybody in the state can have a free medevac. That person from Louisiana would also get it as well. Equal treatment. Okay? If you have a state law, it applies to all citizens of the United States, not just Missouri people.
Wait, are you saying you do? Like, that's
We
real
do.
thing?
Equal treatment. Yes.
No, not
Do
that's
they in
not
the state of
right.
Missouri get medevac, free medevac? No.
Oh, okay.
No, no, no. That's not a law.
I was like, where was it?
How much an ambulance ride cost?
Ambulance.
Not as much as a helicopter ride. If you're not a member of medevac, you need to be. It's an insurance that you can add on. Your parents need to look into it. When I collapsed a lung, I had to get life flighted.
How do you collapse it?
Hey, you want to tell us story again?
I had to get life flighted, and we were a member of medevac. The only reason we were a member was because 2 months earlier, 3 months earlier, my uncle collapsed both of his lungs. A tree fell on him. and he had to get medevaced, and it cost a crap ton of money.
How do you crash your lung?
Basketball game.
Oh, I thought it was
Yeah, no, don't tell us.
Soccer. Soccer.
Basketball game.
So.
It's like
Okay?
No, it was already just at the knee.
Equal treatment in all states. Extradition.
What?
Extradition.
The problem?
If I'm accused of a crime in one state and they catch me in another, they send me back to the state that I did the crime in. Okay?
Finish that one here.
Okay. Everybody get that?
No.
All right.